This last video addresses 10 government policies that can promote and effectuate the 21st century flood risk wisdom we've been discussing in the previous videos. We noted earlier that governments have a public trust in wise flood risk management and an associated fiduciary role in transaction due diligence. The number one priority then is to adopt the 5 fundamental tenets. 1. Flood exposure is location specific. 2. Flood hazard is a mathematical curve. 3. Flood risk is a present value. 4. Due diligence is pricing risk. And 5. Resiliency is good insurance plus sensible mitigation. Government needs to educate all its officials, the media, and the general public as soon as possible to abandon foolish approaches. This includes abandoning the current NFIP binary approach, which neither supports due diligence or resiliency. It follows from this that there are 9 more crucial policies that governments should pursue. Number 2, get behind modernizing the standard of practice for transaction due diligence and support an online tool for pricing every property's flood risk. Number 3, make updating the 8 ultra high resolution geospatial data the top budget priority for flood risk. Number 4, continuously improve change forecasts for climate, sea level, floodplains, and land use. Number 5, properly encourage, regulate, and reinsure private flood insurance markets. And number 6, broaden participation in good flood insurance. Clearly, in this day and age, no mortgage property should be without flood insurance for a 30-year snake eyes chance flood. Moreover, incentivize those not subject to mortgages to carry flood insurance. Number 7, in furtherance of optimal resiliency, government should only promote sensible flood risk mitigation projects. Consider the way government optimizes the location of fire hydrants and fire stations. Don't waste tax dollars on mitigating a flood risk that is actually cheaper for property owners to insure. Number 8. There are recognized inequities in flood risk due to past housing discrimination. In its policies toward due diligence, flood insurance, and mitigation, government must also remedy these inequities. However, remedies should not distort perceptions of flood risk or decisions about insurance and resiliency. In further consideration of fairness, the 9th policy holds that government agencies should avoid externalities in managing the utilization of floodplain capacity for flood storage and conveyance. Thus, no community should impose adverse flood risk in the form of raising aggregate flood risk price on another community. This includes for any private or public project. In terms of private projects, communities should not place the burden for no adverse impact entirely on new development. To control catchment runoff, communities should consider a uniform tax on runoff. Potential public projects with externalities include not just drainage improvements and levees, but also floodplain roads and bridges. Traditionally, bridges are not sized for snake eyes floods. The latter points up the potential conflict of interest between the goals of maximizing road improvements and minimizing adverse flood risk impact. Lastly, government should not conflate the objectives of floodplain ecosystem restoration with sensible flood risk mitigation. Both are valid goals, but they are largely distinct. Public dollars marked for ecosystem restoration should be optimized for habitat. Any flood risk reduction in the form of insurance cost reductions would deserve to be funded by the insureds, which also means that any public dollars actually marked for flood mitigation should be optimized for insurance cost reductions. Mixing these two goals and two pots of money is a conflict of interest and surefire way to not get the best of either ecological habitat or flood risk mitigation. To summarize, there are 10 fundamental policies governments can pursue to bring about 21st century flood risk wisdom. This concludes our video presentation on 21st century flood risk wisdom. Thank you for joining. Don't forget, you can document professional development hours with the form at the end of the introduction. And please don't hesitate to email, text, or call me with comments and questions.